All right, we'll call the meeting to order. Tarud, can we have roll call?
Trustee Valdez,
Here.
Trustee Shaw,
Here.
Trustee Sparks,
Here.
Trustee Williams,
Present.
Trustee Barkey.
Here. Okay. Can I call for adoption of the regular meeting of March 1, 2023?
So moved.
Second.
Moved in second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, thank you. And then approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of February 1, 2023.
I'll make a motion for approval.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Aye. Okay. Nina, do we have any comment cards for closed session items?
Not related to closed session.
Okay. We will now take a recess and go into closed session. We'll see you in an hour. All right, we'll call the meeting back to order. Welcome, everybody, to the Orange County Board of Education. All right, Mr. Rowland, do we have a report out for closed session, please?
President Sparks, Vice President Shaw, members of the board, members of the public. The board did not hold a closed session on items 1 through 4. There was no action taken.
Thank you. And next, I'll call Nelson Cook from the Coaches of Influence to the podium.
Thank you very much, President Sparks, Board of Education. Wonderful fans, sports fans. I'm looking around. I don't see anybody with my haircut. And that's discouraging because I want you to know I'm a very valuable man because God does not put marble tops on cheap furniture. So don't forget that.
That is good.
It's a pleasure to share with you, and I will pray in just a moment, but it also talked about some encouraging words, and I'm also representing a group called Ambassadors of Compassion. Our kids in schools need a fresh wind, and Ambassador of Compassion provides a fresh approach to developing leadership, resiliency, compassion, and action for junior high, high school, and colleges. Over 70,000 kids have gone through the program with a goal of 1 million this year. High-powered people all around the country are investing in this because they see the value as kids deal with labor, what it means to work for your goals and dreams, influence, that you become like those you associate with, forgiveness, which is a huge thing, and I'll talk about that in just a second. Where's my time that I need to watch? Is it somewhere where I need to keep an eye on? Oh, you're fine, Daru, you're fine. Because if you put it up there too quick, I'm going to take an offering. So, but forgiveness, and the last is experience. Don't let negative experiences affect your pursuing your goals and your dreams. And at Segerstrom High School, for example, Nick Canzone, who is the athletic director, said the kids are having conversations that have gone through this program that they're not having at home and they're not having in school, in classes, that they are talking to one another. And it's effective because it affects their hearts. And as we know, the heart of the matter is a matter of the heart. And a head coach, when talking about forgiveness, what we have is little videos we show, and then the kids break up into small groups, and they just talk about what they saw and some questions. And one of the leaders said, is there anyone here that needs to ask forgiveness of someone? And the interesting thing was the head coach at that school stood and he said, I do. I need to ask my mother to forgive me for abandoning my little sister and I when we were little kids. And because of that, because he did that, boom, 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 all of his athletes started saying, I need to ask forgiveness for this or that. It's just been a wonderful, wonderful program. And I just want to encourage the board to consider that. I'd like to present that and the one that put it together at some point, if I may. So, having said that, I just want to say in our, I don't understand that. As long as I'm green, I'm okay? Oh, okay.
Green, yellow,
All right.
you're okay.
It'll start beeping at you.
Yeah, okay. Anyway, in our culture today, we're so negative. And, a lot of times when people say, how are you? What is our typical answer? Fine, how are you? We're not even paying attention. I know when I was coaching and teaching, I'd walk the hallway and kids would come up, Coach Cook, how are you? And I said, I'm going to check to see if they're paying attention. I said, I'm dying of cancer. They said, great, Coach, have a good day. It's kind of, we either don't pay attention or we don't care, right? And so what I've started to do is when someone comes up to me and says, how are you, Nelson? I look them right in the eye because I care. And I say, I am better now that I've seen you. Doesn't that change things? It has for everybody that I've done it with. I am better. See, when I say I'm better now that I've seen you, doesn't that make you feel better? I didn't even pay him. Okay. So and then from there I go, well, isn't it about the big two? And everybody says, what are the big two? Well, love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Love your neighbor as yourself. Are you my neighbor? Okay. See, we're already starting to get into something positive, aren't we? That's what we need today. We need a little more positivity. Does that mean I'm done?
That's it.
I didn't even see yellow. All right, I'm going to make my prayer short then. If I may do that, may I have an extra 40 seconds? Okay. Father in heaven, I thank you so much for the board. I thank you for the people that are here to share with the board. I thank you for your love for all of us. And I ask that you would give us a divine experience tonight, that it would not be same old for the board or for the people coming to share with the board, but that each one of us would have a fervency of compassion and care and love and concern for one another. I pray that you give the board wisdom, knowledge, understanding, and discernment, that we would have a joy unspeakable and full of glory in all that we do, because we represent you. There's nobody in any position of authority that has not been allowed to be there for one reason or another. So may we just encourage one another and build one another up as a result of this meeting. And I ask it in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And now for the Pledge of Allegiance, we'll have Dr. Stefan Bean.
All right, please rise. Put your right hand over your heart. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Please.
Thank you, Dr. Bean. Nina, do we have introductions
There are no introductions at this meeting.
and public comments?
Yes, we have a number of public comments. So what I'm going to do is I will read a name followed by whoever's on deck. So maybe if you want to prepare yourself and come on down so we can move right along. So I'll call off the first name, Lynn, who will be followed by Charlotte.
Before I begin, board members, may I please ask if you've received the two-page document that I had placed before you asked Ms. Boyd to place them? There are 2 pages.
We have them.
Thank you very much. Does everyone have a copy? All right, thank you. I'll start. I'm Lynn Biddle, and I'm addressing agenda items 5 and 6, Mr. Rowland's invoices for legal services. When approved, those invoices will be paid from funds over which you are obligated to act as fiduciaries. By law, as trustees, you have a legally imposed fiduciary duty to protect state education funds, monies you hold in trust for a very specific state purpose, to educate the children under your authority. So I ask again, will you, with items 5 and 6, attentively pore over the Rowland invoices to assure that every dime spent directly serves your duty to put the education of the county's neediest children before your own personal missions? And here's why I ask. The 2022 fees chart that I have given to you has just been updated. With the chart in hand, please look at the far right column. That column shows a measure of your past critical invoice overview. Specifically, it shows just how many invoice questions you asked Mr. Rowland before each of you voted to pay them in full. $360,000 in 222 fees, agendized over 12 monthly meetings and reviewed in open sessions. The transcripts show 0. You ask 0 questions. Now, recall with me, if you will, your August 17th meeting where Trustee Shaw, during candidate George Valdez's interview, asked Mr. Valdez to explain what special skills he would bring to the board if he were chosen to serve. And Valdez answered, and I quote, "My legal background would be my greatest asset to the board, adding, and I quote, "I can tell when a lawyer is minimizing something that is not a minimal issue. I can see where a lawyer may be overbilling the Orange County Board of Education for services they are providing. So clearly, I think that's my strongest asset," unquote, from Mr. Valdez. That said, Trustee Valdez has never raised a single question in 6 months since he served while voting every time to pay the Roland invoices in full. That's true of each of you who bear no less personal liability. On item 6 this evening, the $57,000 Roland invoice, I hope to hear why there are no documents, none whatsoever, posted to support reimbursement claims for out-of-pocket travel expenses. And regarding that same invoices, I'm also hoping to hear about the $9,000 listed on page 2 that I've given you for reimbursement of expert fees. No notification or documentation were attached to the agenda to explain or support payment of that claim. Realizing that you can't answer me now, I'll listen for your answer later. Thank you.
Thank you.
Charlotte will be followed by Amy.
Hi, my name is Charlotte Binkley, and I'm here today as a representative of WAVE, Women for American Values and Ethics. WAVE was founded a decade ago to hold our elected officials accountable for fulfilling the duties of their office with American values and ethics that Orange County's residents deserve. When they don't, WAVE and its 2,000 plus volunteers mobilize to elect those who do. I want to acknowledge and thank the board for taking a first step into implementing an investigation into the allegations of sexual misconduct at the Orange County School of the Arts. However, WAVE does not find that directing the superintendent and his staff to conduct this investigation is sufficient enough. WAVE continues to request an adequate outside investigation with an oversight committee that will report back to the Board of Education. I want to reiterate that a properly conducted investigation will help to maintain the historically excellent reputation of the Orange County School of the Arts, that the investigation will hold accountable those who have participated in the sexual misconduct while clearing the school of the cloud that hangs over its unique place in educating the students of Orange County. It is your higher obligation to follow through on the requests of current students, alumni, parents, and the community to conduct an outside investigation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Amy will be followed by Nomi.
Good evening, trustees. I'm Amy Luna Capelli. I'm here tonight to follow up on the public comment that I made at last month's meeting, echoing the requests from community members and alumni survivors to launch an investigation into the allegations of sexual misconduct and criticisms of a school culture that protects predators instead of students at OSHA. I was heartened to learn that you, the board, after several months of hearing courageous survivors share their gut-wrenching stories, decided that it was finally time to stop protecting potential pedophiles and launch an investigation. So thank you for taking this much-needed step toward inquiry and healing. Yet, as I read about what this investigation entailed, I became concerned that what you've tasked Dr. Maharis to investigate might not be sufficient to understand what has happened over the years. More importantly, not enough to determine if the current practices and school culture continue to protect alleged predators and the school's reputation rather than protect its current students. According to a recent OC Register article, and I quote, Maharis said he is specifically taking steps to ensure policies and procedures are in alignment with legal requirements. As the protector and guardian of student safety, I would hope the board would set the standard higher than being merely in alignment with legal requirements. When protecting childhood innocence and bodily sovereignty, meeting a legal requirement should be the minimum bar. In May of 2022, this quote appeared in the student online newspaper. The beginning of the year was quickly soured with multiple sexual assault allegations reported by students. Despite a long history of sexual assault and harassment at OSHA, many victims claim administration has not addressed this issue properly. I felt like administration was trying harder to protect my assaulter's reputation than my own safety, said one student. My view is one case is too many, and when we continue to take things so lightly, we continue to see how this is perpetrated, says an anonymous OSHA teacher. These comments were made less than a year ago, pointing to a culture in administration that is currently blind to these types of complaints. As I mentioned last month, I serve as school board president for a thriving arts-infused charter school. Our school has, for as long as I can remember, had several of our students matriculate to OSHA each year. My 3 sons each have friends who either went to or currently attend OSHA, and my concern runs deep on so many levels as a charter school board president, as a mother, and as an engaged citizen. And I'm frankly shocked that the board's concern stops at alignment with legal requirements. I encourage you to go beyond. Use your power to set the parameters of the investigation so that it is robust enough to ensure our children are safe. These brave survivors who have spoken out deserve to have their stories mean something, to lead to action, to change things for the future. Use your power to create an oversight committee that includes the voices of these survivors, or ask that the district or state attorney general investigate. Our families deserve this, and our children deserve this. It is your moral obligation to understand what is really happening at OSHA, and how else will we know if anything is criminally involved, and how else will we know if the innocent can be exonerated from these persistent suspicions and complaints.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nomi will be followed by Ada.
Hello again. First, I do want to thank you very much on taking this step that you've taken as a board to issue that third-party investigation at OSHA. But we have some concrete recommendations that we are really encouraging you to embrace. First, though, before I go into that, I just want to say that the responsibility to issue that investigation into these claims of sexual abuse at the Orange County School of the Arts, they were pushed onto the superintendent. And this investigation was never, ever the superintendent's responsibility. You cannot throw him under the bus. You know that we've been here month after month addressing you. So let's put the responsibility where it belongs, which is this board. We're demanding a few more steps, as I said, and they are as follows. That first, an independent oversight committee be created, and after that independent oversight committee is created, then that oversight committee should establish the parameters of the investigation and hire the investigation team. We then request that all the findings of the investigation are please turned over to the oversight committee, who should then report to the Board of Education. If those terms that I just stated are not met, the public will forever question the true independence of this investigation. You, the Board of Education, needs to take this into your own hands and ensure that this independent investigation has a credible oversight committee. I would recommend also that at least 3 survivors or parents, alumni from OSHA are part of that committee. Seems appropriate. OSHA is on fire, so what steps are you going to take to stop it from burning down and protect the students and the school? Thank you.
Thank you.
Ada will be followed by Katie.
Good evening, board members. My name is Ada Briseño, and I'm one of the many voices that has been standing with the survivors and in asking you for an independent investigation of OSHA. I understand that this board finally moved forward with the independent investigation, and I'm finally happy that we agree. I have reviewed your resolution, and in order to move forward in the correct and meaningful way, we ask that an oversight committee be appointed, and that this committee have the charge of selecting the parameters of the investigation, hire the investigation team, and oversee their work, as well as report it back to you. This is the only way that the public, survivors, students, and parents will have trust in the process. And we are asking you to add those parameters, because survivors will not come forward unless there's validity in the process, and that validity needs to start with this resolution. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Katie will be followed by Nancy.
Good evening, board members. I want to begin by thanking you for the step that you took 2 weeks ago to ask the county superintendent to investigate the sexual abuse allegations at OSHA. I truly appreciate that action. Moving forward, the only appropriate way to proceed is to appoint an independent investigation oversight committee. This committee should select the parameters of the investigation, which should include far more than the hiring, supervision, and safety set forth in the resolution. This is not only necessary, but is the only way for you to gain the trust and the confidence of these students, survivors, parents, and the entire community of Orange County. This investigation must be done by a team that is well-equipped, fully supported, and willing to wade into the deep waters of OSHA's history of alleged sexual abuse. The launching of this investigation cannot be a mere pat on the back. We will not allow our traumas to be weaponized as a PR move by any of the parties involved, including OSHA. Taking a glance at the safety procedures at OSHA will not be enough. What is written on paper does nothing to actually protect these students. No matter how many times OSHA sends an email claiming that they follow proper reporting guidelines, there are literally hundreds of us who have experienced otherwise. Even one report of sexual abuse falling through the cracks is unacceptable. The abuse I endured at OSHA was never addressed while I was there, despite reports directly to teachers and our then principal. My first appearance here before you in December was 21 years in the making. I don't want these students to wait 21 years, 21 months, or even 21 days. In that amount of time, your abuser might rise through the ranks of power at OSHA as mine has. Our reports of abuse that are placed in a banker's box to collect dust, if the reports were ever kept at all, cause long-lasting and multi-layered trauma for the students who deserve nothing less than receptive listening, empathetic understanding, and a process that not only exists on paper, but one that is truly lasting, actionable, informed, and just. I implore the board to center survivor voices in this fight and build the oversight board around those voices. This is what will lead to change and reparation, as well as justice in any and all of its forms, as the full spectrum of the abuses that uncovered at OSHA are finally brought to light. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Nancy, followed by Lindsay.
Feel like I need to exhale after that testimonial. Just a moment. So, good evening. Public Schools Week brings together families, educators, and community members to focus on local public schools and the positive things happening nationwide in classrooms and in school buildings. There is a resolution tonight, Resolution 0523, to declare April 2023 Public Schools Month. The rationale for the resolution is from the Freemasons of California because they have promoted and sponsored this recognition. However, the Freemasons of California have declared September 2023 to be Public Schools Month with a theme of fulfilling our obligation, which are contrary to the statements in tonight's resolution. It's unclear to me why the language and the date in the resolution do not align with the organization that the board proclaims to be the impetus for the month. However, recognizing public schools is important. The Learning First Alliance declared this week, February 27th through March 3rd, as National Public Schools Week. This week is a great time to recognize the vital role that public education plays in the lives of students and in our democracy. Public schools educate 9 of every 10 students and serve as a great equalizer in our society. Through public education, every child has access to the same education, no matter race, religion, or economic status. Ideally, public schools are inclusive environments where young people learn to appreciate their unique character and our national identity, built on a foundation of diversity through different cultures and perspectives. In addition, public education provides students with the skills that they need to be active and informed citizens. It teaches about history and government and rights and responsibility as citizens. It develops critical thinking skills, and those are essential for participating in our democracy. Unfortunately, in recent years, public education has come under attack. There are attempts to limit meaningful access to information and to dismantle support and protection for children, especially marginalized youth. There's fiscal waste and mismanagement that are taking funds away from students. These efforts undermine the essential role that public education plays in our democracy. The Orange County Board of Education serves over 2,000 public school students in their access program, the juvenile court schools, and the Orange County School. I encourage the board to take opportunities to highlight the positive things that are happening in the county schools and focus on serving your public education students. Thank you.
Thank you.
Lindsay, followed by Lori.
Good evening, board members. Thank you for starting the process, which I hope will lead to some answers for a lot of people who've come speaking to you over the last several months about wanting justice. I hope that like my colleagues have mentioned, centering survivors as part of this process. I hope you'll really consider the importance of oversight and putting that body in a system of trust for the body of OSHA students, the faculty that teach there, and everybody who has been ignored through years of neglect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Lori, followed by Kelly.
On the PlannedParenthood.org website on December 11, 2019, they boast, Planned Parenthood Los Angeles announces landmark program in partnership of high school-based well-being centers across LA County. Today, Planned Parenthood Los Angeles, along with officials from the County of Los Angeles, including the Board of Supervisors, the Departments of Public Health and Mental Health, the Los Angeles County Office of Education, and the Los Angeles Unified School District announced a landmark program that will open 50 well-being centers in Los Angeles high schools to provide healthcare services, education, parent resources and support, and more to students on campus. This is a first of its kind collaboration between local partners to address the social, emotional, and sexual health needs of young people throughout Los Angeles. We've heard of the plan of wellness centers opening in our Orange County schools. We've been told that these wellness centers will not have medical procedures or pharmaceuticals administered. Yet we wonder if the counselors in these settings will be affirming confused young people into changing their gender and referring these youths to outside agencies for the medical care, with or without parents' knowledge or consent. The young people who will be going into these wellness centers may be the most vulnerable emotionally. Is Planned Parenthood partnering up with schools to provide coloring books and yoga instruction to help children with their social emotional needs? OUSD has 11 such wellness centers opening in Title I schools. Parents do not want these. Confusing and then confirming children in their confusion to change genders is child abuse. Keeping parents in the dark or lying to parents that their children will likely commit suicide if they don't confirm this, when in fact the suicide rate of individuals who go through this process is high, and up to 85 to 90% of gender confusion in young children is resolved and biological sex is preferred. It's tragic. The Pacific Justice Institute says California school districts' crisis hotlines link kids to sexual predators. I urge Superintendent Al Maharas and the trustees on this board to be very cautious of the conversion of our children quietly and subtly. Please do your due diligence to not allow our children to be confused and affirmed into chemical and or surgical mutilation of their bodies. Thank you.
Thank you.
Kelly, followed by Libby.
Good evening, everyone. I like to come and give positive messages, and sometimes I wake up and I see a lot of negative press. And this week I saw a lot of negative press by Judge Riddle, who likes to come in every month and speak really negative things and waste colossal amounts of time. And I saw that she filed a lawsuit against a board member, and it was really, really disturbing that she can't spend her retired judge years focusing on investigations that deserve investigations, like wellness centers that parents and children don't need, instead of focusing on your jobs, and your jobs are amazing. And I want to encourage you guys to stay positive among some really dark, stupid wastes of money that are going on right now in Orange County as a retaliation against your hard work. You guys do put kids first, and parents do appreciate that. It's not easy to be in your position. Last month you guys passed a parental rights resolution, and we were all really grateful. And every day we see districts that are not putting kids first, and we appreciate your efforts, and I want you guys to stay positive. Thank you.
Thank you.
Last but not least, Libby.
I concur with some of the previous comments, asking that you please do and have an independent committee do the oversight of what's happening at OSHA, so that everybody can be confident in the results of that investigation. But what I prepared to bring for today is I saw on the agenda that Dr. Williams wants to add the Cochrane review of mask mandate studies to the record for this board. Even though the link in the agenda doesn't work, I'm familiar with the Cochrane meta study. This is not a new study, but a review of many other studies. To quote Michael Hitzik of the LA Times, of the 78 studies compiled in the Cochrane paper, only 6 concerned the COVID-19 pandemic, and only 2 of those studied COVID and mask mandates. Those didn't actually examine mask wearing, but only whether mask mandates were in place. Nevertheless, they found that mask mandates helped suppress COVID. In one, a massive study of more than 340,000 residents of rural Bangladesh, the study found that the mask programs that promoted but didn't mandate masks increased mask usage and reduced symptomatic COVID infections, demonstrating that promoting community mask wearing can improve public health. Masking tripled among the test group. The second study, involving about 6,000 Danes, found a modest difference between mask wearers and non-wearers, but the study was small and underpowered in statistical terms. It was designed to test for a 50% reduction in infection rates and took place in a setting where COVID infections were very, very low. A Federal Centers for Disease Control and Prevention compilation of studies of mask efficacy shows that most have found appreciable gains from masking. Among them is a study of an outbreak aboard the U.S. aircraft carrier Theodore Roosevelt, where sailors lived and worked in close quarters, which found that masks produced a 70% reduction in infection, or a reduced risk of infection. Another study of 33,000 pupils in 8 school districts in Massachusetts found an infection rate of 11.7% for unmasked and only 1.7% for masked children. During the 2021 outbreak of the Delta strain of COVID, outbreaks were 3.5 times more likely in schools without masking rules compared with those that had mandates. So of all the studies that actually looked at mask wearing, confirmed that wearing masks worked to reduce infection. And for some anecdotal evidence, just last month at this meeting, I sat masked next to a woman who came down with COVID the next morning, and I have yet to have COVID. So wearing masks does, if you wear them properly, they do work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have more?
No. Thank you. All right, thank you, everyone. Moving on to the consent calendar. Do I have a motion to approve items 1 through 6 on the consent calendar?
So motion.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay. Consent items pass 5-0. And Nina, do we have charter submissions? Oh,
It said, did you want to just speak at the end of the meeting? Do you want to speak now, or you want to speak? Okay. That's fine.
we're happy to have you come speak. Yeah, come on out. Yeah. Sorry for the
This,
confusion.
okay, we're going to hear from Linda.
Which I think is very dominant in the room. So many of the comments that you have just heard seem to be directed to the empty seat in the room. I'm also guilty of doing that because much of what I'm going to be telling you is going to be directed at a superintendent, Dr. Maharis, who has been here, I think, once in the last 5 meetings. But I have no recourse except to direct these comments to you. I want to alert you to something you already know. Yesterday at the Board of Supervisors meeting, there was a memorandum of understanding granting Al Maharis as superintendent of schools and the Orange County Department of Education for mental health student services the sum of almost $8 million, actually about $7.5 million, and for the next 3 years. My friend Lori already talked to you about these wellness centers all around us that are incorporating Planned Parenthood as part of their agenda. And of course, we know of the close association between Planned Parenthood and CHOP, and that concerns us. If these wellness centers were simply wellness centers to make kids comfortable and reduce their anxiety, we would have no problem with that. But there is an agenda here. And it's an agenda that has been well documented. And I would like to add even further documentation. Just 2 months ago, CTA passed a new business item
this was in January, to hire an LGBTQ plus liaison in every school in the state of California so that schools will be a safe place. Now, where are these liaisons going to be? Out on the soccer field? I doubt it. They're going to be in these wellness centers. They're going to be talking to these kids. And we have already documented all over the state and the nation where a willing and devoted counselor to this particular agenda will encourage these kids to seek gender transitioning. So we've laid the groundwork and the pathway for them, and that is what concerns us. I know you as a board do not have the staff and the money to investigate all of this going on. But I would ask you to urge Dr. Maharis to come before us and explain how he can set up these wellness centers and guarantee parents that they will not be conduits to chalk services. If he can do that, we will support this agenda. But if he cannot do that, then we'll be speaking often here as well as at our local boards. And I just want to reiterate something Lori mentioned. Orange Unified Parents found out that these wellness centers have been instituted at 11 Title I schools, and they are very upset. They want to know who made this decision, when it was made, and now how do we get rid of these wellness centers that potentially are going to be preying on their kids. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I think I asked if there were charter submissions.
You did, and there are none.
Okay. Item 7. We'll move to item 8, and I'll call Araceli Chastain to the podium.
Good evening, President Sparks and members of the board. Today, the board will hold a hearing to grant or deny the Irvine International Academy amended petition and requested material revisions. On December 13th, 2022, Irvine International Academy submitted material revision requests to add grades 7 and 8 and remove the set number of required minutes for physical education in the charter petition. On January 24th, the charter school submitted amendments revising the original charter petition to reduce, not remove, the number of physical education minutes to a minimum of 50 minutes per week. The board held a public hearing on January 4th to consider the level of support for the material revisions. As legally required, the revised petition has been reviewed according to California Education Code, and you've been provided the Orange County Department of Education staff report that offers recommendations for consideration by the board. Orange County Department of Education staff recommend that the board approve both the Irvine International Academy's material revisions to add grades 7 and 8 and the revision to the original petition, reducing the number of physical education minutes for all students to a minimum of 50 minutes per week. The revised Irvine International Academy charter petition meets the standards outlined in Education Code 47605. The California Assessment of Student Performance and Progress, or CASP, data for 2021-22 shows Irvine International Academy students are performing higher than the state in meeting grade level standards on the English Language Arts, 44.7 points above standard, and mathematics, 64.6 points above standard. The 2022 California School Dashboard status levels are classified as high for English Language Arts and very high for mathematics. Additionally, the proposed material revisions will allow the school to grow its enrollment and allow additional flexibility in course scheduling while providing a minimum number of physical education minutes each week for all students. Prior to public comments, representatives from Irvine International Academy shall have equal time, or 10 minutes, whichever is greater, to present evidence and testimony responsive to the Orange County Department of Education staff recommendations and findings published on February 14th, 2023. I now invite representatives from Irvine International Academy to the podium. It's just you today, Dr. Lee? Okay. Just state your name for the record.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Dr. Stephen Bean. I'm the Executive Director for Irvine International. I don't have much to say other than I do want to compliment the board on overseeing a very collaborative charter school division led by Araceli, Maureen, who is our coordinator, and Nina. They're very cooperative during this process. It's been a very smooth process, and we're very happy with the recommendation that they provided this evening. So I just ask you guys to accept the recommendation and approve the material revision that we submitted. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The hearing is now open for 15 minutes of public comments. Deputy Superintendent Boyd, are there any public comments for this agenda item?
Not related to this agenda item.
This concludes the public hearing for Irvine International Academy. The board has 4 options for action regarding the charter petition material revisions. Option 1, approve both of the material revisions. Option 2, approve one but not all of the material revisions. Option 3, approve one or both of the material revisions with conditions. Or Option 4, deny both of the material revisions. President Sparks, I now close the public hearing and turn the meeting back over to you.
Thank you very much, Araceli. Okay, board members, do we have any questions? I'll start to my right. Mr. Valdez.
I don't have any questions, but I wanted to go over those numbers again. Dr. Bean, 44.7% above standard in math. That is just off the charts. Did I hear 66.6% over standard in English? Is that what I heard, Araceli? 64? It's really easy to get a yes vote when you're coming back with numbers like that.
I don't have any new questions. We talked a lot last time, so appreciate you being here.
Trustee Barkey.
I'd like to just make a motion to go ahead and approve both.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passes 5-0. Congratulations. And thank you for your wonderful work.
Good news.
Fantastic. We're so proud of you guys. Okay, I'll call Araceli up to the podium again.
The board will now hold a hearing to grant or deny the Sycamore Creek Community Charter School amended petition and requested material revisions. On December 16th, 2022, the charter school submitted material revisions requesting to become a countywide charter school at high school grade levels 9 through 12, open an additional school site in the city of Cypress, and change enrollment preferences to add a preference for students who reside in Orange County, add a preference for pupils who attend the public elementary school where 55% or more of the pupil enrollment is eligible for free and reduced price meals for the purposes of the Charter School Facilities Grant, and remove the preference for students who reside within the attendance area of Ocean View School District, where the school is currently located. On January 31st, 2023, Orange County Department of Education staff met with charter school representatives to better understand and clarify information in the material revision requests. As delineated in the staff report published on February 14th, 2023, OCD staff cannot provide a recommendation regarding the conversion to a countywide charter school, as the Education Code does not provide a specific process for how a charter school denied by a school district and approved by a county board of education under Education Code Section 47605 obtains countywide status via a material revision. We recommend that the charter schools submit a new countywide charter school petition for consideration by the board that meets all requirements for submission, including the gathering of signatures and appropriate notification to impacted school districts. OCD staff recommend denial of the request to add high school grade levels 9 through 12. Currently available academic performance data does not indicate that the charter school presents a sound educational program for the students currently being served. California Assessment of Student Performance and Progress, CASP data for 2021-22 shows the overall Sycamore students are performing significantly lower than the state in meeting or exceeding grade level standards on the English language arts, 46.1 points below standard, and mathematics, 80.8 points below standard assessments. The 2022 California dashboard status levels for Sycamore Creek are classified as low for English language arts and low for mathematics. Charter school operators have described the challenges as they have had in the past 2 years, and we recommend that the school put all resources and attention to immediately implementing a robust intervention plan that results in significant improvement in students' academic performance across all grade levels in the coming years, or the charter may be at risk. OCDE staff recommend denial of the request to open an additional facility within the boundaries of the city of Cypress. Education Code Sections 47605 and 47605.1 do not allow for a district-denied, county-approved charter school to open a site outside of the geographic boundaries of the district that originally denied the charter school. Additionally, we have recently been made aware that the charter school may not have appropriately notified the affected school districts of their plan to open within district boundaries. Cypress School District has stated that the proposed location is within their district boundaries for elementary school and within the Anaheim Union High School District boundaries for the middle and high school. The charter school provided notification to Los Alamitos Unified School District and Ocean View School Districts only. We have notified the lead petitioner of this information. OCDE staff recommend approval of the additional enrollment preferences for students who reside in Orange County and for pupils who attend the elementary school where the charter school locates for the purposes of the Charter School Facilities Grant, and recommend denial of the request to remove the preference for students who reside in the attendance area of Ocean View School District where the school is currently located per Education Code Section 47605 E2B. Prior to public comments, charter school representatives shall have equal time or 10 minutes, whichever is longer, to present evidence and testimony responsive to the Orange County Department of Education staff report published on February 14, 2023. I now call representatives from Sycamore Creek Community Charter School to the podium.
Hello, my name is Leanne Bruyette, and I'm a professor in the School of Education at UC Irvine. And what I'm going to do is simply give a very brief introduction that clarifies the context of this discussion. When a new charter school, and your charter school opened in the year 2019 to 2020. So as you all remember, that's when the pandemic started. So it did not facilitate the absolutely best start. And yet, well, let's go on. When a new charter school opens, families whose children have already settled into a local school and made friends are hesitant usually to change schools. So when families move a child to a new school, it's usually because the child was not thriving at their current school. Even when the new school is a better fit, students who struggled at their former school take a while to catch up. And this has an impact on the charter school standardized test scores. Sycamore Creek faced an additional challenge in that it started the first year of the pandemic. So when Sycamore Creek students took the CASP for the first time in 2021 to 2022, no data was available from earlier tests to show whether students had been catching up or falling farther behind. Some people argued that the lower scores were the fault of the school, but the many enthusiastic Sycamore Creek parents who attended the February public hearing with the Orange County Board of Education were clearly convinced that their children were thriving and advancing. So I'm going to go ahead and let Sarah explain.
Thank you. My name is Sarah Bach, Executive Director of Sycamore Creek Community Charter. Thank you, Board of Trustees, President Sparks, staff, and audience this evening. I am pleased to be here and address these concerns that have been brought up by staff. I'd like to start with this slide, and I want to show you here. These are the raw scores of our 9 8th graders from last year who took the CASP 21-22 for ELA, math, and science. I want to draw your attention to the scores that are highlighted with an asterisk, because those scores, for instance, the bottom one in the middle column of 2,566 points is 1 point away from the cutoff of meeting the standard. So it is 0.0004% away from meeting the standard. At the last meeting, you may recall that I talked about how when you have a very small class size, one student is more heavily weighted if they don't perform as well as a school or a class size of 30 or a district of hundreds of students. So I just want to ask us tonight to consider, are we here to talk about how our students are doing? If we are, then let's look at their scores and think about how they are actually doing pretty well. In this graph, I want to show you that the blue bar is Sycamore Creek's 9 8th graders. When we allow those few students who are within 0.004 or 0.002% away from meeting the standard, our students actually outperform in all categories of math, ELA, and in science. I want to mention that those are the actual raw scores. If you notice in the previous slide on the right, those were the science scores, and there was no highlights, so those are the actual scores. The yellow bar is LAUSD, and the green bar is the state. I just want to point out that Sycamore has about 55% of its 8th graders meeting or exceeding the science standards, whereas LAUSD has a little more than 20% of its 8th grade students meeting or exceeding the science standards. And again, Sycamore students outperform in all categories. All right, this slide is a little different. This slide shows the opposite. We actually want less here. Less is better here. So we'll first start to the right, the science scores. These are our 9 8th graders compared to the entire state and the entire district of LA Unified. And in science, there's no purple, Sycamore's purple. That's because 0% of our 8th grade students fell into the category of not meeting the standard, being in that lowest bucket, basically failing, not meeting at all. Whereas you can see LAUSD, it's more than 20% completely failed, if you want to look at it that way, and did not meet the standard, and somewhere maybe around 17 or 18% for the state. And it's the same trend across in math and in language arts. In fact, more than 50% of LAUSD students did not meet the standard at all in math, and around 32% of our 8th graders didn't. I just realized I failed to mention that these scores include about 20 our SPED students, which is about 22%, which is actually much higher than most districts. Percentages of special education students, and if you include our 504 students, it's even higher, it's 33%. And you might remember this chart from our last hearing where we showed the recent research by Dr. Kimberly Telfer-Radzat, where she looked at schools across California. She looked at Waldorf charter schools in particular and found that over time, as students progress through the grades, Waldorf charter school students by 8th grade are outperforming all other schools. In fact, this is the language arts graph. She found that just over 19% more students in the treatment group were meeting or exceeding state ELA standards by 8th grade versus 2.8% more in the control group. And I just want to mention that when we look at our 9 8th graders from last year, 14% were above LAUSD and 9% were above the state. Yes? Yeah.
Small comment in. Some people here might not realize that Waldorf schools start teaching reading at the age of 6 as opposed to in kindergarten. And that's why it is useful to talk about catching up, because actually they are jumping. Yeah.
Yes, developmentally, yes. Thank you, Dr. Brugge. And then here's the chart for math, which has the same outcome. In this figure, we can see that on average, over 16% more students in the public Waldorf charter school treatment groups were meeting or exceeding math state standards by 8th grade. And by contrast, the control group, 12.5% fewer students were meeting or exceeding the math state standards by 8th grade. When we look at our 9 8th graders, Sycamore is 21% above LAUSD and 15% above the state. In closing, thank you, Orange County Board of Trustees. But in closing, just to echo what Professor Brugge mentioned, despite the hardships of Omicron last year that we described at the last hearing, where we lost almost 20% of our instruction throughout the year, as well as it being our very first year of state testing. And of course, there's always proctoring anomalies your first year. There's always going to be difficulties. It's your very first year proctoring such a big exam. So our 8th grade students, we believe they did well all in all, and we do expect them to continue to do better and better. Thank you.
Thank you. Or Sally, we'll call you back up. Sorry. I was looking at you.
Thank you. The hearing is now open for 15 minutes of public comments. Deputy Superintendent Boyd, are there any public comments for this agenda item?
There are.
All right, so we'll do the same thing. I'll call a name followed by who's on deck. We'll start with Andrew, followed by Chris.
Good evening. My name is Andrew Pulver, proud superintendent of Los Alamos Unified School District, and I'm pleased to be able to speak to all of you tonight. I'm here to urge the county board to follow the recommendation of its staff and deny Sycamore's request for material revision. Additionally, district legal counsel has submitted correspondence to you explaining that Sycamore has failed to follow the specific process and education code for obtaining countywide status. And thus, there's no legal basis for any of you to approve this material revision as submitted. Simply stated, this charter cannot legally request to locate a facility within our district, within Anaheim, within Cypress, sounds like we don't know, through a material revision. Obviously, you approved a material revision just prior, and those were the appropriate grounds. Your own staff recommended that. As far as the data that you just shared, I think as soon as you take away data from certain students, of course, data is going to improve. But just because a bar graph shows, that doesn't mean it's accurate. The state data is clearly there. Sycamore, as you already had heard, is restricted to locating only within its geographic boundaries of Ocean View School District. The Sycamore charter has incorrectly asked the county board to allow it to operate throughout Orange County. Again, not an appropriate use of material revision. And the charter has failed to follow the heightened standards of expanding its geographic limits. The public's concern with the charter's unbridled operation without geographic limits need not be explained. The legislature has specifically plotted the standards in Education Code 47605.6 that a charter must meet in order to grant permission to operate countywide. They have simply failed to do so. The Sycamore petitioners are mistaken if they believe that the law allows them to convert into a countywide charter simply through material revision. There is no specific process that they have failed to follow. That specific process, excuse me. They needed to have gained, as you heard your own staff recommend to you, gain signatures of parents or teachers in the county with current meaningful interest in the school, but they have flatly sidestepped this threshold requirement. It is our hope and expectation that you deny Sycamore's request and you follow the recommendation of the county staff, just like you did prior for the previous material revision. And as you are clearly advised of your legal roadblocks of why Sycamore's request cannot be approved. I heard some of you comment about praising the previous charter school and how they have improved and have exceeded beyond the state's academic performance. Clearly, you've seen that Sycamore has not, and we would request that you deny and encourage them to continue to invest in those students and make sure they're focusing on all students, not just the ones that they want to report on a bar graph. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chris will be followed by Leanne.
Good evening. My name is Chris Forhan, and I'm the very proud president of the Los Alamitos Unified School District Board of Education. We at the district strongly agree with the county's staff's report to you that Sycamore Creek Community Charter School's expansion at this time, as it is not in the best interest of children. Our district is not aware of any local interest in Sycamore's proposal to offer grades 9 through 12. And based on the thorough report by your county staff, Sycamore has limited students interested to even support this expansion. It currently has only 13 students in 8th grade, and it does not appear that the school has enough students to adequately feed into the 9th and 10th grade levels based on enrollment projections for the 24-25 school year. This lack of interest could be because Sycamore is currently performing well below the state's average in core subjects. Sycamore is also performing the lowest in mathematics compared to each school in the district in which it currently operates, Ocean View School District, according to the California State School Dashboard. In 2018, county staff had concerns that the petitioner's implementation of the Waldorf educational model would result in lower academic performance. So the petitioners then assured you that Sycamore students would meet or exceed the performance standards by 8th grade. Yet, according to the county staff report, Sycamore has no publicly available data for 8th grade due to the low enrollment, and the data petitioners made available only confirmed that nearly none of their small 8th grade population was meeting statewide performance standards. As a Board of Education, we simply lack confidence in the charter's proposal to expand before addressing its low academic performance. We urge the county board to deny Sycamore's material revision request. Thank you.
Thank you.
Leanne will be followed by Alicia.
Hello. I just want to address what was just said about Waldorf schools. I actually started my career in Germany as a teacher, and Waldorf schools follow a European model. And it's something that some people might like, some parents do, some don't. It's not like we're saying that everybody in a certain area or that they become the neighborhood school. But one of the things that has been associated with a switch in the United States used to teach reading in first grade. Now it's nationally normal to start teaching reading in kindergarten. The problem is that young boys and young girls actually, what would you say, develop in different ways. And there is actually, and I'm more than happy to give you that evidence. There is evidence that young boys can take 6 years longer than young girls to actually mature as far as their ability to really talk, to read. They tend to have more of a focus on physical, on spatial awareness, and I won't bore you with that. But if anyone wants to talk to me about it, I'm more than happy to do so. So the problem is that in the last few decades, there have been fewer boys graduating from college, for example, and it's actually been getting worse. Now, there is evidence, it can't be proven, that if those boys had perhaps started reading, started some of the academic things that are currently being simply because the United States wants to be globally competitive. But sometimes globally competitive actually reverses the child's ability because they're being asked to do something when they're not ready to do it. Therefore, I hope that the two superintendents, who I think are perhaps aware of what I'm saying, will at least think about that. This is not, we are not wanting to take any of your prerogatives away from you. We are trying to reach out to those families who perhaps would do much better in this particular model of education.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. So we'll have Alicia followed by Stephen.
Thank you all for hearing us today. I had the privilege of meeting with charter staff for our oversight visit at Sycamore Creek. I am the board president and a mom of 3 children currently attending Sycamore. I am also a small business owner, and my day job is an attorney. By night, I'm all about Waldorf, and I enjoy it so much that I started the teacher training program 3 years ago, and I'm still doing it, even though it is quite a commitment. So while at Sycamore this afternoon, we walked out of one of the classrooms and were faced with snow. I'm not sure where you were at about 2:30 this afternoon, but my kids swear it was snowing. It was hail that was fluffy and white, powder white, and it was really something. And so everybody in this room faced that in order to get here today. So I think that's quite a testament, right? Southern California snow. Education is incredibly important to my family, and I have the student loans to prove it, right? And as you heard at our last meeting here, we have a school filled with educators who are sending their children to our school. We believe in this model so much that we are willing to take that leap of faith. We are doing something very different than what many other schools are offering. But they are learning, and they are learning incredible skills. There was a comment in a local newspaper, while the Sycamore kids are learning to sew, other kids are inputting data. And the rebuttal was, sewing is an important skill that surgeons need, that we are losing our dexterity because we have lost that ability to work with our hands. We are so removed from these skills that were once so fundamental to our survival. Just a couple personal things. My son was the one that had the wiggles in kindergarten, and that's how I began my Waldorf journey. That wasn't going to work for our family. He wanted to color the bear rainbow, not brown. He wanted to move his body. And now in 5th grade, he's reading at an 8th grade level and reciting Robert Frost poetry. So my 3rd grader is leaving me notes in cursive. I guarantee there will be one on my pillow tonight when I get home. And my 1st grader is so excited about learning. She's constantly telling me the stories, things that I'm not sure I understand fully because I wasn't there to hear the beginning of the story, but she is so fired up that I'm right there with her. It's an incredible model. And when you look at the test scores, it's really not apples to apples. We are asking for a chance to expand our school and to really show up and show you what we have. We need that chance to do that. Thank you.
We'll now hear from Stephen.
Thank you for allowing me to speak. This is my first time coming to a meeting. A little bit about me. I live in the Los Alamitos School District area. I have 3 children that attended the school district who have their master's degree. So I wasn't asked to be here by the school district. I simply saw an article in the local newspaper, decided to read up on the subject. I spent a career 37 years in business. I helped grow a company from 2 people to 1,500. It was a finance company. It had $1 billion in outstanding when I joined. and $50 billion when I left. Since retirement, I've been a consultant. I served as a board of directors on a public company for 7 years, so I have a lot of experience in business. I have 2 children, or I have a brother and a sister who are teachers, and I have a son who's a teacher at a low to moderate income school district, and I have 3 cousins who are teachers. So I would say I came from a family of teachers and decided to get into business. Early in my career, a vice president said to me that the final measurement of results, of performance, are your results. It's a period of time in my life where my area of responsibilities weren't doing that well, and at review time, I was hoping that he would overlook the performance of my area and give me a good review. Unfortunately, he told me that results of the final measurement performance and my results weren't very good. There seems to be some confusion over how well the school did, Sycamore did, in their performance. The California results show you're not doing very well, and I understand you've come up and said there's some different ways of looking at it, but based on how the school looks at it, or the California looks at it, they aren't very good. So as I look at it as a business person, I saw poor test results and a very young school to be moving into a high school responsibilities, and only 9 students in your 8th grade to be moving into 9th grade. It looked to me like with those kinds of results at this point, it's a little early in your development to be expanding to the high school level. And having lived in Los Alamitos School District, I was concerned that you would do anything to harm that school district. Seems to me, if anything, you would want to learn from that school district and other high-performing school districts. What are they doing so well, and what can you do to improve and leverage what they're doing? In business, we talk about best practices. What are the best practices, and how do we apply those? So I'd be very concerned as a parent of a grandchild who will be attending Los Alamitos school districts, they would do anything to harm them. I certainly appreciate enthusiasm. I appreciate those willing to strive and try new things, and that's what we did in the organizations that I managed. But from my perspective, it's a little early to be advancing and moving on to a higher level of teacher training.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Student training.
Is that our last?
That'll be it. Yep.
This concludes the public hearing for Sycamore Creek Community Charter School. The board has 4 options for action regarding charter petition material revisions. Option 1, approve all of the material revisions. Option 2, approve some but not all of the material revisions. Option 3, approve 1 or more of the material revisions with conditions. And option 4, deny all of the material revisions. President Sparks, I now close the public hearing and turn the meeting back over to you.
Thank you, Araceli. Okay, well, we have had a lot of public comment. Thank you for that information. I'm going to start with board questions, and I'll start with my left. Trustee Barkey, do you have any questions for either side?
At this point, I don't have any questions.
Okay. Trustee Williams.
Yes, I do. A couple questions on a few issues. If you may come up, Sarah, and I will ask Janine to come up, and my questions will deal with the academic component of the test scores as well as the legal issues regarding opening up a charter school outside of the denying district. So to begin with, I have had a few conversations with the good Dr. Burlett from UCI Education School. There she is, and I so appreciate and respect your degree of expertise on the Waldorf School. The Waldorf system is a very impressive system. It does work nationwide. We see good test scores, especially on the PISA, which I think you made the case, Dr. Burlett, that the PISA scores were exceptional for those countries that use the Waldorf approach to education. The reasons that people are concerned are, of course, the scores that probably are not a fair representation for the period of time that you began. Right before COVID. And you came before this committee here, this board. We approved you because we believed in the vision. We believe in the Waldorf vision of excellence and how well the kids and the children have done in the past. So, Dr. Brilliant, if I can get you up here to kind of elaborate more on the previous conversations we had, because this is very important to put into the public record. We had Stephen who just came up here. Thank you, sir, wherever you went. Thank you for coming up and speaking. You'll love charter schools because they are different and they have a different approach. And when you have a typical public school that is a brick and mortar with the same curriculum, it's good for probably most of the kids in that district, but it's not good for everybody. And that's what makes charter schools different. And that's what makes them exceptional. And that's what this school does, because as you showed last week, a lot and many of your teachers, I mean, your kids have teachers who are parents. And why did they come there to Sycamore and their teachers? Because you offered something different for their kids. Maybe not every child in your area should go to a Waldorf school. I think getting back to Dr. Burlett, thank you for coming again. I certainly appreciate your expertise. But could you comment on these PISA scores and why they are important?
Yes, how many people know what a PISA score is? Oh, okay. It's actually an international thing, and I think there's 79 countries that are now participating. And so if you're in education, it's something that gives you a sense of how your country is doing compared to other countries. And in recent years, the United States actually has been going down in comparison to, for example, the European countries. And that's not a good thing. The problem is, and I understand totally why you're talking, because my husband happens to be a businessman, and he talks a great deal about best way of doing things. And the thing is, in education, children are very diverse. And some of them simply don't grow up as fast as some others. In fact, the same person who came up with the research that turned into nuclear weapons didn't speak until the age of 6. And that sort of thing just happens. We have to not say that every child who isn't reading at the end of the 5th grade is a child who for some reason is failing. That could easily be a child who later in their life will have, oh, excuse me, I don't mean to take up too much time, but Waldorf gives children time. And the fact that it seems like a little thing, but the fact that they don't have to read until the end of 1st grade as opposed to the end of kindergarten allows those little boys to catch up. And they don't start to think, oh, I can't do this. And they don't turn against school. Those people who saw these parents when they were here last time and all the enthusiasm, it's because some of them did have children who were starting to give up because they were developing a little bit slower. But that didn't mean that those children weren't going to do very well. And so what we're doing is we're arguing that this particular model of education, which gives the children one more year to get started on reading, which is such an important part of their development, allows them to succeed where they might not have otherwise. So it's not a way of trying to take children away from any particular district. We're very happy when those children do very well. And I'm sure that you're just as happy when a child that wasn't doing well is able to get into a classroom or a school where they do well. So I think we actually agree pretty much completely. And so this is just for those children and those parents who really feel that this is good for their child.
And if I can, for the record, I need to put into this record because there's a lot of people who may not be aware. I'm not picking on you, Steve, but if you're a businessman and you didn't get paid for what you're doing, would you do it? Probably not, huh? No. I'm making a rhetorical point here, and I'm picking on you. Sorry about that. You're off the record. I'm the actor now. I get to say what I want. So I'm making a point because you made this a business point, and this is very important for the public record. This woman here did something that I probably wouldn't do as a businessman. I wouldn't hire somebody if I didn't have the money to do it. I wouldn't buy anything if I didn't have any money to do it. Do you know what Sarah did, Sycamore Creek, during the COVID crisis when she was not allowed by the state people and government? She was not allowed to take any more money, and she took in how many kids that you weren't paid for, that you educated for free? How many? What's that? I want this for the record.
We were allowed to take in 125, and we took 129. So four more students.
So you took in kids who wanted to come in, and you didn't get.
We would have taken more, but then we also had the spacing constrictions, and everyone had to be 6 feet apart. So as we all know, we're dealing with so many things and factors to work through, and
So you took in kids that you weren't paid for. You wanted to go and take them all in, but the state didn't pay for it. You had restrictions that were put on by the state for the COVID, and yet you did this because you wanted to help your community.
Because Waldorf education is so transformative, and I think that's why it's the largest international social movement that is not a denomination of sorts. There are thousands of Waldorf schools around the world. There are Waldorf schools in communist China that aren't allowed to be there. And once you find it, as Dr. Brouet is explaining, and it resonates with you and your family and your child or your children, there's really no other option for that person, that family. For me, I agree. It's not perfect for everyone. I truly believe it serves the most students the best, and that's not every student.
Could you also, for the record, we had a conversation about your scores. Could you give us your game plan going forward?
Our game plan is really to keep doing what we've been doing and have it start to show. So when you really look at numbers, things start when you really get close to the data. So I mentioned our 9 8th graders. Well, those were not the only students that tested. We had 60 or so students that tested. So if you have 9 8th graders that are doing well or even very well, but then you have, as Dr. Brouet mentioned, slower developing younger students not doing well, but many of them, that's going to pull the whole group downward. But we really truly believe as we come out of this pandemic, out of this cloud, and we get our footing, and we keep working with the students, because we offer the looping model, which is so important. There was just an article that came out in Cal Matters, I think, that Vermont, for instance, over half of the schools in Vermont use the looping model, where students stay with the same teacher for more than 1 year, and they're finding that up to a month of instruction is gained through that model. And so when our students stay with a teacher, and because we just got opened, we need a little time for them to stay with that teacher. And additionally, another factor that I don't think has been mentioned is that we opened up through grade 6. So those 6th graders, they weren't with us for those other 6 years with our curriculum, with our pedagogy, with the teacher. But by the time they got to 8th grade, I think if you look at it with a nuanced view at actually how they are doing, that's pretty significant when you consider everything. So as we're allowed to grow, as we're allowed to basically continue along our path so that we can see how it plays out, And let's say we were coming up for renewal, which we're not, but we are expected to in 2026. Let's look at it then. And I will be the first to say, if our scores are not where they should be, then by all means, and this is in the public record, you know, that I'm not going to stand up here, I don't think any of us would, and say that we should continue doing something that is not meeting the legal guidelines.
So in other words, you're going to work hard to improve those scores.
Oh,
correct?
yes. Oh, yes.
Of course.
And we are working hard and we're seeing improvements. We think we're going to see large improvements this year, coming up in just a couple of months.
Okay.
Yes.
We were just talking about the international PISA scores, and we were talking about the age of 15. If I were you, that's when, and we're talking about Europeans who start at the age of 6, reading, etc. It's at 15 that they really start to show, and so we would like to have that.
Okay. So you went the high school part of the request too, huh? Okay.
Well, if you do, yeah.
Okay.
Because it's just in the, she's just in the curve right now.
Okay. We'll get into that in the next question for Janelle here. So part of the appeal process that we heard from, for the public record, we received very late Friday afternoon, didn't have an opportunity to read it, review it until afterwards, but we received it Friday afternoon from Los Alamitos Legal Counsel regarding this issue of opening outside of the denying district. And looking at the information, looking at the laws, there's a few laws that play a role in the analysis. And to help us understand your perspective, could you give us your perspective on why that may or may not apply here?
Yes, gladly. Good evening, Janelle Rulli with the Law Offices of Young, Binney, and Core. Thank you for the opportunity, and certainly proud to be here with Sycamore Creek. As to the facility location, I will say unambiguously a charter school that has been denied by a school district and is approved by the county board in its current configuration is no longer allowed to have any locations outside of the district boundaries. That's not what Sycamore is trying to do. Sycamore is asking to become a countywide benefit charter school, which is under a different statute and has different rules for facility location. This is new. This is new. This is novel, and that's why there are a lot of opinions. It struck me that we heard from the district both that Sycamore is doing the process wrong and that there is no process. So I'm not sure how we have both of those at the same time. To the argument that that a charter school can become a countywide benefit only by collecting signatures and sending notifications. First of all, Sycamore did send notifications, but the requirement to collect signatures is attached to an establishment charter school, so a new charter school. Sycamore is an existing charter school. It is not new. It is not proposing to be new. Further, there's an education code section that says whenever there's a material revision, we are confined to the standards and criteria of section 47605. That's the district denial or approval statute. So a material revision to become a countywide benefit is not even actually, we don't have to follow the requirements of the countywide benefit. A couple other things I would say. There's another statute that allows a statewide benefit school. There's only one left. There were only 2 ever. Statewide benefits no longer allowed under after AB 1505. There's a statute that says a statewide benefit that at renewal becomes authorized by the county becomes a countywide benefit. So there is precedent in the law for a charter school to sort of change its stripes, and instead of being a statewide, can now become a countywide. So that's there in law. And then I guess the last thing I would say is there's been, I think, some derision around the idea that the education code is permissive, but this is a real thing. The education code is permissive for school districts. If something is not prohibited and it wouldn't be contrary to the job of the school district, they get to do it. Charter schools have what's called the mega waiver, so charter schools are relieved from all of the legal requirements for school districts, except some which seem to be adding on each year. There was a court case early on in the history of charter schools that says charter schools are supposed to be flexible and they have extra flexibility. So for all of those reasons, I think on the facility location, what I want to say is the idea of converting from a District 9 charter school to a countywide benefit relieves the jurisdictional issue if the board chooses to approve that.
I'll let my other board members ask questions.
You know, given that we're on the sort of lawyer side of things, I'd like to call up Greg Rowland to sort of go through his take on this from a legal perspective.
Thank you, Janelle.
Thank you.
President Sparks, members of the board. My take on this is what you've seen before you this evening is very high-level lawyering in the charter school area. What the decision, the board action that you're going to have to take isn't necessarily a commentary on Sycamore Creek's dedication or the Waldorf model. It is bound. It's reflective of certain intricacies and complexities in the Charter School Act. It's not an easy act. Now, you have 3 charter school experts in this room, and me. And we have come at this from a completely different perspective. Okay? Now, my job, representing the board, is to try to reflect the ideological position of the board to support school choice. At the same time, keep you in compliance with the law. The board also has an ideological predisposition towards following the law. So I approach this issue quite differently. Ms. Ruley's right. The permissive sections of the Education Code are real. In the Charter School Act, there's conditional, there's permissive, and there's limiting language. Unfortunately, in this particular circumstance, there's limiting language pertaining to the location of the site that she's acknowledged, and there's limiting language about granting preferences. There's preference to students in the geographical location. So my perspective was that perhaps if we had an analysis that could justify making a countywide benefit charter pursuant to the section, that perhaps we could get there by way of material revision if all other criteria were met. We haven't. We don't have that analysis before us. So my recommendation to this board is to go with option number 3 and to approve one or more of the material revisions with conditions. The material revisions that I would recommend is requesting to modify enrollment preferences in the way that Sycamore Creek requests. It's reasonable and laudable to include references for school districts with 55% or more free and reduced lunch. I'm sure that that's their intent. With the condition that the preference for Ocean View students remains. That leaves us in compliance with the Charter School Act. If there are other material revisions, conditional material revisions that we can approve, I would recommend those as well.
Question for you, sir. So we're talking about material revision versus a countywide charter. Those are 2 different processes.
Those are 2 different things entirely, right?
Okay. And we're here just for material revision, which suggests that this may not be the right moment to make a county or create a countywide effect with
I
Sycamore?
agree with that. There's a method by which countywide benefit charters are usually sought. They just went about it a different way. That doesn't mean that their different way is wrong, but we didn't do the full analysis on whether it meets the conditions of a countywide benefit charter, which are the educational services to be provided by the charter school will offer services to students, to a student population that will benefit from those services and cannot be served as well by a charter school that operates in only one district in the county. We didn't get any analysis on that. There was simply a disagreement about whether they followed a process or whether they didn't. There was some discussion about what process they followed and whether it was legal. So at this point, The conversion to a countywide benefit charter has not effectuated itself, so we are still bound by the limiting language of the education code.
Can we, looking at the memo from our department here on page 69, it gives the 4 options there. I don't know if you're at that page, 69. But I'm thinking, and my question to you is, could we add the high school levels as long as they're within the denying district? Could we add that component to this as some of the options?
If the condition is that there are no new sites outside the Ocean View attendance area.
Okay, so they can have a high school with that condition.
Staff made a recommendation that their educational performance was not sufficient to justify that. I can't take a position on that one way or another. I was under the impression that Sycamore Creek was seeking grades 9 through 12 in the Los Alamitos location. If they are not, then it's within the board's discretion and jurisdiction to approve the grade level changes.
Okay, that's a very important issue for me. So, Sarah, can I get you up here for the record?
How far do you want me to go?
Just stay. Stay.
Take 2 steps back. Sarah, obviously we're getting into the real nitty gritty here and into the weeds. So my question is to you, you heard our attorney in saying that the countywide charter may not be a green light for you. Would you, though, take your expansion to high school and keep it within the terms of within the limit and the boundaries of the denying district? Could you live with that for now?
Yes.
Okay.
Which would be something like, now I want to get these questions from these guys, but it'd be something like, I'm not making a motion, but I'd like to make a motion after I hear your question, something along the lines of approving option 3, approving 1 or more material revisions with conditions, moving to approve material revision requesting modified enrollment preferences with the condition that the preference for Ocean View student remains, and
Number 2, adding the high school
adding
level.
the high school, potentially. But I want to hear from these guys.
Adding a high school that is not outside the
That is
attendance
not outside the attendance area. But I haven't made that motion yet, but that's what I'm thinking. That's where my thinking's leading. Okay, Trustee Shaw.
Okay. Well, thank you for your great work, Mr. Rowland, in figuring out the law. For the millionth time, I'm going to say I wish I'd gone to law school. But I made some notes here. At 2:30 this afternoon, I was in Anaheim, and it was snowing there. It was kind of fun. I was smiling, too, when I heard about young boys learning about spatial awareness. I have 6 boys, ages 15 to 5. They study spatial awareness every evening playing football in my family room. It's kind of fun. But as far as the academic achievement, I think your point was very well made with me about you get a student and whatever's been going on with them up to now, but from day one you get them, and hopefully you're helping that student grow academically, but you can't control where they're at before you get them. And I teach at a community college in Los Angeles County. Quite a number of our students are English is not their first language, and they're community colleges are famously trying to play catch up in things like math and stuff. And I'm just thinking to myself, as I was listening, if you were to compare my college, the freshman class and the math score to the freshman class at MIT, we probably don't look that good. Does that mean we're doing a bad job at our college? I don't think so. I think it's just reflective of that's where the students were when they showed up. So it's always seemed to me the fair way to assess a student's achievement is really to compare that student to themselves. Where do they end where do they start the academic year? Where do they end? And how are they looking versus just comparing this school to that school? Am I onto something, Sarah? Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think, like I mentioned earlier, that we have 2 tests coming up. The MAPS test. So we did some testing this fall, and we'll do that again here in another month or so. And that will show us how much our students have grown over the course of this year. And that is helpful in seeing where we think they'll be come CASP taking test time about a month after that. So we'll have that. And we think, this year has been a lot better. We haven't had the lapses in attendance that we had, and we're sort of all coming out of everything. I feel cautiously optimistic. I would say even a little bit more than that. Really looking, this has forced me to really, really look at our scores more closely, and I think all in all that I have very high hopes for all of our students. But to see that growth, like you're saying, compare them to each other, to themselves, and I know the state, the dashboard is working on this growth component as well. I think it's about another year or two out for us to start seeing that on the dashboard. So it'll be good to see. It'll be good to see where our students are at compared to themselves, and then see the CAST scores that come next and how they compare to last year.
Well,
But we don't have those tonight.
I'm sure convinced that life is pretty unfair, and I was thinking about how being a brand new school and you get hit with COVID, this is your trying to get rolling, and how profoundly unfair that whole situation was. So I just appreciate the passion from the parents, the teachers. Obviously, Sarah's just an angel amongst us. So thank you for being here and all the great efforts you're putting in. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Shaw.
Stay up there.
I'm not going.
Trustee
I
Valdez.
know. I know.
Hi,
Trustee
Sarah.
Valdez, hello.
So first, I want to thank you for the chart and really trying to break down those scores. If I am to interpret the chart correctly, what you were saying is that 3 of your students were so close to passing that if they, by hundredths of a percentage point, that if they were included in the passing rate, that your scores would be so much higher because you only had 9 students in the grade. That was
Yes,
in effect what you were saying, correct?
Yes, thank you. I'm glad that came across correctly. Thank you.
So, I've been thinking a lot about this over the past month because I did voice some concerns about that. So thank you for, at least giving us some type of an explanation of that. It's always my opinion that, whether I agree with something is not really that important. The parents agree with it, and the parents are, believe that their children are thriving. And I am of a belief that parents lead the way on education. I've made that, statement very publicly many times. Then I get our legal opinion from our counsel, which is saying, this could lead to a lawsuit, potentially. This could lead to a lawsuit against your school, by Los Alamitos. And that concerns me because now I'm putting kids in harm's way, and harm's way of a lawsuit, I mean.
Yes.
Okay? And the uncertainty
yes, I
of
understand.
that. And then now, in the last 5 minutes, we're sort of talking about keeping the expansion within the same district, and our board's attorney is giving the green light on that. So now I have to think about this again. You said you're okay with that. Where would you expand to if we were to grant this tonight with that condition?
You mean within the district?
Within the district.
That's yet to be known. We're in Orange County, and we know the real estate market here, and for schools specifically, it's even more difficult. So at this point, I don't have an address for you.
Okay, but you are okay with that if we said yes to that?
Absolutely. We're
I just want you to understand, from my perspective, we were criticized just tonight for spending $30,000 a month on Greg Rowland. And he's telling us, no, don't do this in the way that this is plotted out. I have, my background is in the law, and I have a lot of respect for Mr. Rowland, having worked with him now for 6 months. He absolutely knows what he's talking about, and he's worth every penny of those bills. So, I have to trust in his legal counsel, and so this issue is important to me. If you're okay with staying within the district, I'd be much more positive on this tonight.
Thank you.
I have an additional question before I make a motion, and that is, from some of the public comment we heard about, is there capacity to have feeder students from the 13 to 15 in 8th grade that would likely be feeders into the high school? So in terms of building those numbers, can you answer to that?
Yes, I can. I don't have, we did spend a section describing a plan for that in the material revision. By looking at the proximal current independent Waldorf schools, those are the private schools, and then the few Waldorf charter schools that are out there as well. And knowing, as you know, the maps and the parents who said how they were driving an hour back and forth, and looking at the current numbers of students at those schools and their grade levels, and knowing there isn't high school for the high school options, and which ones a couple have high schools, privates do. So where could those students come from? They would probably, many of them come from there, as they do in Northern California with the 2 Waldorf charter high schools up there. That's what those feeder schools are for them, is those other proximal Waldorf independent schools and Waldorf charter schools. So when you look at those numbers and then you look how far away those schools are from where we are, then it does make sense. And given the history of how far we know our families are currently driving, and it's mostly all word of mouth, every student that we have is coming because they know somebody who's already at our school, that trend would likely continue if we continue doing our very best job. Does that make sense?
One more comment.
Okay, and Trustee Williams, go ahead.
Yeah, so however we vote here, it may not be that you get the countywide nod or green light.
Yes.
I hope you sure come back with us with the proper methodology to get to that, so you achieve your goal, and that you put other Waldorf schools within this county. It's a remarkable process of learning for certain kids, and you're a great leader. Thank you for your leadership.
Thank you, Trustee Williams.
Thank you. And I'd like to call Mr. Rowland up again to help with the second part of the motion that I'm about to make. I'd like to move approval of option 3, approving 1 or more material revisions with conditions. I move we approve the material revision requesting modified enrollment preferences with the condition that the preference for Ocean View students remains.
And the second part of the motion, if I can read my own handwriting, is to grant the additional grades 9 through 12 with the condition that the Ocean View, that it is within the Ocean View attendance area.
Correct.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
You mean that?
Deputy Superintendent, did you?
Yeah, so if the board would go to page 73. I think what you're basically saying, under staff recommendations, the option 3, and then number 2 and number 4. Number 2 would include the language, it's within the current boundaries.
Correct. Correct. It's
Because
not
number
unlike
2
staff
speaks to the high
recommendation number
school.
4.
Right.
Okay.
And what was that you just said?
I said it's not unlike staff recommendation number 4.
Right.
So this is
No.
option number 3.
It's option number 3.
It's option number
Approve 1 or more of the material revisions with conditions. And the conditions are number 2 and then number 4. Number 2 is the request to add a high school, not to deny it, but to add it.
Within
Ocean View boundaries, which are the current boundaries. I just said the current boundaries because those are the current boundaries.
Yeah.
And then 4 details the approval of the enrollment preferences and the inclusion they don't change the preference for the Ocean View students.
That's correct.
Okay.
Somebody
And-
should make a motion.
Okay, so
I'll second that motion.
do we have a second to the motion?
Do we even have a motion?
Yeah, I made the motion.
She made it.
I made the
finished it?
motion and you added the.
Nobody elected me to
second-
anything.
No, I know, but you added the second sentence, the language, so it would be correct.
Okay.
which I adopt that language, and then
The
two
motion was by
conditions were-
Lisa and the second was by Ken, correct?
Yeah, and condition 2 and condition 4.
Do we want to read it into the record again before we take the vote? Are we all clear on it? Is staff clear on how, I'm clear on it, but I just want to make sure
Okay,
before
well,
we make
I'll
this vote.
say what we have down and then
Okay.
you can correct me
Okay,
if I'm
perfect.
wrong. That the board has made a motion for option 3 to approve one or more of the material revisions with conditions. The option is granted to add high school grade levels 9 through 12 within the current boundaries. And the board is also approving the additional enrollment preferences identified in number 4 for students who reside in Orange County and for within the boundaries of Ocean View currently. No, I'm sorry, I need to say that again. The board is approving the additional enrollment preferences for students in Ocean View
Who reside in the current attendance area
area.
of Ocean View
Thank you.
School
I'm
District.
trying to just not take the rest of that language, but yes, who reside in the attendance area.
Madam
of
President,
Ocean View.
Yes.
sorry to interrupt. Do you think we should give maybe a break and give staff time to actually write it out? I'm just throwing out that option in case they actually want to put something down on paper and then read it when we come back.
That would be good.
Okay, so let's take a 5-minute break, 7-minute break.
Good suggestion.
And get the language down because I want to make sure that we're in
Thank you.
alignment with the law. Thank you. Okay, we're going to call the meeting to order again.
What? Where are we going?
But I'm glad everyone got a little break from all that lovely discussion, democracy in action. So we're taking board action, number 11. Would you like to read the more precise motion, Nina?
The board's made a motion for option 3 to approve one or more of the material revisions with conditions. The first is approve the request to add high school grade levels 9 through 12 within the Ocean View boundaries. The second, approve additional enrollment preferences for students who reside in Orange County and for pupils who attend the public elementary school where the charter school locates for the charter school facilities grant, and keep preference for students who reside in the attendance area of Ocean View School District where the school is currently located per Education Code Section 47605 E2B.
Nicely done.
That sounds so much better. Thank you. Okay, and we have a second from Ken. Now we'll vote. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Passes 5-0. Thank you so much. Congratulations. All right. I'll move to item number 12, approving revisions to the annual budget in excess of $25,000 as per Education Code Section 1280. Revisions have been included in the second interim report that is certified positive by the county superintendent. Do we have any discussion or questions of Renee?
You have questions?
I'm asking the board. Any questions for Renee or?
This is an action item, correct? So we have to make a motion to bring it to the table for discussion, and second, then we can ask questions. So I'll make a motion to bring it for discussion.
For discussion, okay. Second? I'll second it. All right, open for discussion. I'll start to my right this time. George, do you have any questions or discussions for Renee?
I'll defer for a second.
Okay. Trustee Shaw? No. Trustee Barkey?
No.
And Trustee Williams?
Yes.
Perfect.
Okay, let's go through. Same issues that we've had before regarding the contracts, and has there been any movement done to be more revealing and transformative on what's going on with these grants? We just heard today that there is a grant that was passed by the supervisors.
The mental health one, yes, that's a grant we've had for numerous years.
Right.
And so that's a renew, no, because that was for the following years. But that grant is in here and has been here for multiple years.
Okay. And where is that grant on?
So if you look
that
on
appendix?
If you look in, let me see if I can find the page.
Yeah, you can give me a page.
B134, is that right? That's one
I
of
was
them.
looking in the grant section, so. It is on page B144. K-12 school-based mental health services and whoops, I'm sorry, that's not the right one.
Yeah, there it is.
Actually, it's on, 145, Mental Health Student Services Act. So that 8 million is over 3 years. And so you'll see in this budget, it's obviously 1 year.
What page was that?
Right here.
145,
145,
on the top of the page.
Okay, so that is through the county, which we all are for helping those kids with emotional distress and mental health. As I have brought up in the past, though, this is a funds that are being accepted without board approval.
So this is for coordination of services. And so
You're not providing professional services?
we're providing coordination of service. So this pays for the regional health coordinators.
Mhm.
So they're not doing direct services to students. They're actually coordinating with the mental health people at each of the school sites and districts. And so they have 7 regionally. And so they're helping train the district staff. They're not providing those services.
You're not identifying and training representatives?
I'm sorry, I'm not sure I heard.
So on page 4 of 14, with the document of the MOU that was passed, it goes into quite detail about what you're going to be doing here.
Mhm.
And a lot of what's stated in this MOU that you're going to be doing is actually in violation of many of the state education codes because no board approval was given.
So I don't think that's a question I can answer, Dr. Williams.
I know it isn't, and I bring it up only because it's a recurring issue.
And I think
That, we're supposed to have, this is several months ago that we talked about, that we'd have coordination between staff and our attorney on which grants need board approval. We've been over this in the past, and I'm just hoping that we can do that because
well,
technically.
we're hoping that for that also.
Pardon me?
We're hoping for that also.
Okay, why hasn't it come to pass then? That's what it comes down to, because certainly like this grant here, which is over $2 million, it's in violation of many of the education codes, 1750, 1751, 1703, 1260E. So, it's these type of technicalities. I don't think we would have anything against providing mental health services for kids that are doing it. This is more of one that I don't think this meets the statute of the code. And so, again, this is a serious issue I brought up in the past, and I'll keep on bringing it up.
Dr. Williams, if I could. Maybe it's going to pick up without. Okay. My apologies, but staff has been trying to work with the board's attorney, and my understanding is the county attorney, Mr. Riel and Mr. Rowland, are dialoguing, and we have not finalized this issue. We've had some conversations several months ago, and then we were trying to coordinate additional meetings and other priorities for the board as well as this office. So when Renee says we're hoping for that also, that's what she's alluding to. So it's not a matter that we're not interested in this. I think with Mr. Rowland and Mr. Riel's help, there's a disagreement. I think, or I shouldn't say a disagreement. There's a lack of clarity with regards to whether or not we're in agreement on all the applicable code sections that you just identified and where things fall. And so that's what we're trying to work through right now. That the superintendent has discussed with us, looking at methodology so that for transparency purposes and the things that you've described. But we do believe that we are bringing things before this board that are required to be brought before the board. Now, in the grant process, agencies will typically provide a grant. So in this case, the Board of Supervisors has said that they're going to give a grant to this department. It wouldn't come to you until after we had knowledge of that. It wouldn't come before this board beforehand. So I would say we're not in violation from the standpoint, and I don't know the particulars for this one, but because that one is for 3 years out, it would be something that would be coming to the board if it's required to come before the board at a later date. It doesn't come before the approval. If we get something from the state of California, it's coming after. It's not coming on the front end because we don't even know if we are eligible for the grant or the contract. But we hope that we will have a meeting scheduled in the very near future with the board's council.
Very good.
Piggybacking off this, this operationalization of coordination, coordinators, who are these people? Where are they being?
So
What
they work,
companies or nonprofits are they affiliated with?
these are our employees. And
These
so
are our employees.
We've hired them and they are working with the school district. So there's 7 currently. And then there's, in that grant, I believe is 3 more positions that are going to specialize in substance abuse. There's a couple other items in there also. And
So they're hired from, they're new hires.
they're new, well, the 7 obviously have been hired since we received it. So the other 3 would be new.
But the 7, I mean, they were hired from within, or they were already hired, but were they hired from the outside, or were they hired current employees, or we don't know?
I can tell you they're currently employees now, but I actually don't know.
Okay.
From.
Okay.
At one time we had recruitments for them, so I'm assuming at least part of them were new.
Okay, because I know that the constituents are very interested in the backgrounds of these hires that are providing mental health services, and how are those mental health services being operationalized and carried out?
So these are working with districts and giving them opportunities. So the services that they're coordinating with are really up to the school districts governing board to set some of those guidelines. They're just giving them some opportunity and training resources.
Right.
Here's the different methodologies that are available.
Sure, and I understand that.
Right.
But for transparency, our constituents are going to want to know more. And so it's important that we're asking these questions so that they can go ask questions of those districts about what's happening on the ground in each of those districts, in each of those, special services.
This grant calls for the OCDE to identify regional resources and serve as a regional expert of mental health services. Are we capable of doing that?
We have been doing that, yes.
The OCDE?
Yes, they've hired mental health professionals.
But a regional expert, who is designated
Well, they're
as
saying,
a
when they
regional
say regional, they've broken the county up into different regions so that there's support specifically to that region. That's what they're saying, right? And so it could be, because obviously one person couldn't do that for 28 school districts. And so they divided those districts up into regions. That's what she talks about, regionalized work.
Okay. And so we're going to be facilitating collaboration between service providers and the districts to develop referral pathways?
So some of the districts may outsource some of their services to whatever agency. And so that's who the district is telling us to work with, because they may not have, they may be so small they don't have enough mental health coordinators by themselves.
And these mental health services are going through the well spaces that are being created, the 21 or so?
No.
No?
No, not necessarily.
Okay,
No.
okay, so in here, they mention the well spaces as a vehicle for implementing the mental health
Well, I
services.
think, I don't think you were actually able to be here when there was a presentation on the well space, but they did say in those well spaces, there may be a counselor sitting there if the student needed to be referred to them. So there may be.
So when it says here that they're coordinating and providing mental health care, is not that providing mental health care?
No, because it'd be the counselor from the school district. What these people are doing is meeting with all of the school districts and all of their professionals and giving them resources and training teachers and things like that. The counselor would be a district employee.
So it's like a train the trainers type of deal. Yeah.
But that district may not have an individual employee, so they're contracting out. So this coordinator would be working with the contractor.
And again, for the record, these well spaces are not providing general medical care, correct?
Correct.
Okay, but you are providing psychiatric, psychological counseling from a higher level, doctorate level, or master's level?
That would not be a question I can answer. I'm
Okay.
sorry, Dr. Williams.
Okay.
I don't have that level of expertise.
I assume you are, that you're not just referring to lay counselors, that some of these high-risk kids will be going to
Well,
experts.
They may be, they would probably be referring them, I'm assuming,
And-
depending on the level of the concern.
Okay, and does that money follow that student into that provider's office?
All the money does is provide for that coordination of services. It's not providing for the services, so.
Okay, so if that high-risk kid, that kid who's suffering from whatever mental health ICD-9 diagnosis there is, he may get identified, but he may not get the money to receive the actual care. Is that correct?
Not from us, he wouldn't know. That would either go through his health insurance or Medi-Cal.
Oh, okay. So,
But that would be outside of us. That would be up to the doctor and the family and everything else.
okay, so this MOU is creating a system of referral for these high-risk kids.
Yeah, without knowing the MOU, you know more about it than I do at this point. So,
I'm just trying to understand all
Right.
this. This just came about last night from the Board of Supervisors. And the original contracts redlined tremendously. And I'm just trying to get a grip for it, because as I am concerned about, and I think this board is concerned about, is that these kids receive the appropriate mental health care. I think we all are very concerned for these high-risk kids, the adjudicated incarcerated youth, the foster youth, the kids who suffer from gender dysphoria. These are the high-risk kids, the LGBT kids. All these kids need help, and we want to make sure that they get the help.
Right.
It sounds like then this grant sets up a system so it can funnel these kids to the appropriate mental health care provider.
Right,
correct?
and I think that what we're hearing is the concern from the school districts is they don't have enough trained staff to help. And so that's what these coordinators are trying to help the districts give guidelines of here's what you need to be looking for. So, like say for us, we have counselors, we have social service clinicians, we have different levels that are working in our schools. And so it's going to be based on the needs of the students. And so they're helping the districts kind of understand those different needs.
So what happens if a kid is in the foster system? He doesn't have the private health insurance, doesn't have the systems of support, financial, emotionally. How do they get to the appropriate level of expertise?
Right.
in
So
that
normally
field?
they're under social services, foster care. They're going to probably be Medi-Cal eligible. So I'm assuming that Medi-Cal would take that. And that's usually something social services, we have a liaison for social services. That's what they're going to work with them on.
Okay. So if they work for a blue-collared family, middle class, barely getting by on the budget, how does that kid, if the family can't afford it? Because
That's a great,
psychological care is about $250 an hour.
yeah, that's a great question, Dr. Williams. And I probably can't answer that. And that's not money that we're paying for, right?
Right.
But I think that is a big issue. And I just think the availability of services is a big issue. It seems like there's not enough available services. And I think that's what the county is trying to help with some of these services.
Okay. And again, the whole concept is we're not against any of these services. In fact, I fully support it as a primary care physician who at one time I had 1/3 of my practice psychiatry. And so, yeah, both from the spectrum from kids to adults, from depression to Axis 2, Axis 1 diagnosis, a wide range. So I'm a big advocate of these kids getting to the right care. My big concern, again, is the legality. There's some things in here that I think transgress or violate education codes that I think this board could easily support. And I think it's a simple thing if we just implement and get together and talk about it.
Okay.
No more questions.
Okay. Any other questions?
Just briefly, Madam President.
Yes.
A couple of months ago, this issue came up, and because our constituents made public comments, and I raised the issue, and Christine Olmsted was the person who was identified by the staff as the person who would best know about these. And she came up to the podium. I remember what she said, and she said, "This board would be very proud of the services that the department is providing, and that there's no medical type of services being provided. These are wellness anxiety, psychological counseling, which I won't object to. Christine's no longer here, and I got, at some point, I got a lot of emails from the department, but at some point, I think it was Dr. Miramontes was hired to replace her. Am I correct?
Yes and no. So he will start later this month in March, like Monday, actually.
Okay, so he hasn't
But
started.
he is not actually replacing Dr. Olmsted. He is coming on as a deputy superintendent over instructional programs. They are still assessing Christine's role and what the breadth of that was, because she was doing a lot of things. And so there's an assessment going on right now. What is the appropriate position to oversee those things?
Will Dr. Miramontes know what's on the ground, like Christine knew about?
Yeah, he is.
Would he
yes.
be knowledgeable of the on-the-ground services that are being provided?
Yes, I think you might have met him, or one of you did. He is the superintendent of Buena Park School District, and has
He gave me a tour of the Buena Park School District, including their wellness center in Buena Park.
Yeah, so he will have, yes, very good knowledge. And, Dr. Olmsted, her team is still working diligently, doing all that work also. She has an amazing team.
But he will be over that area
Yeah.
along with our student program. So he's being hired, he's the same level as I am, where I have the operational side of the house and he will have the instructional side.
Wow, okay.
Are there any members of her team here tonight?
No.
Well, yeah, there's not.
No. Okay. It might be helpful when we're talking about this kind of stuff. We had somebody
Yes, and so
from that team.
I'll just make a plug-in. If you ask the questions just a little bit in advance, we could make sure of that. So
Yeah.
It's hard as you're asking them just right now to
Yeah.
be able to formulate all of
Yeah.
that. So
That's
it is
typically
helpful.
how we've tried to work with the board. If you send us the questions, we have the right people here, they can answer.
Yeah,
the
and we
questions.
try to do that, just sometimes we don't know. I mean, we have a lot on our
Right.
plate.
But we have a lot of employees.
know.
So
I know. So
having the
so
right
we hear
employee
you.
here.
We hear you, and we'll try, we will work harder on that.
Right. So
All right, good. All right, if we don't have any more questions, do I have a motion to approve these revisions?
We
for
do have a
item
motion
number
and a
12?
second. We have a motion.
We have a second?
We
Okay.
have a second.
yeah,
And
Ken made the motion and you made the second,
Okay.
so you just need to.
So we'll take it to a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, passes 5-0.
I do have
Yes.
a question. Nina, earlier when we were with Sycamore, it was
Thank you.
brought up by the board president, they had a staff site visit today? Is that true?
Oversight?
Yeah.
Yes, they did have an oversight visit today. They schedule
and
those
that's-
out at the beginning of the year, and the charter school chooses the date during the year that they want, happen to fall on today's date. It was not something that just did.
Okay.
And it's typically over several days. It's not just a one-day visit.
Okay, I would just say that probably today was not a good day to have staff visit, even though they may have approved it months in advance.
It was scheduled, Ken. They could have moved it if they had wanted to. We work with the calendar that they choose the dates that they want us to come out, and then they work with us. So we don't push it on
I think sometimes because of the oversight that we have, they're afraid to say no.
We have a lot who move their dates all year. I mean, they choose the dates at the beginning, things come up or they anticipate, or people are out sick and so forth. We work with them. So it's not where, if they had called this morning and said they suddenly couldn't do it, we would have adjusted. So it's not one of those where we're forcing the date down their throat. We work with the charter schools.
Yeah, I'm just suggesting that sometimes fear plays a role and they didn't want to say no. And I would just probably not do a site visit the time that they're having a charter public hearing. That's all that
Duly noted,
the point I'm making.
Okay. Moving on to item number 13, approving transportation plan per Education Code 39800.1. Can you explain that a little bit?
So this is a new item that you've seen. And so when we started LCFF in 2013-14, they capped our transportation funding that we received. In the governor's budget that was approved for 21-22, he added funding to the transportation so we can get, because I'll give an example. I don't know numbers off the top of my head, but it's like we were getting 1.6 million in funding, but our cost is 5 million. So we were underfunded for that. And so as part of the plans for us to get reimbursements for some of our costs, we have to have an approved plan by April 1st. The state never released a template. So here's our best sample of the plan. And so it basically shows most of our transportation services are for our severely disabled students. And so that's what you see the focus on. Access does use some bus passes, and we are looking at some transportation needs for the future for that program. And so by adopting the plan, it would allow us to apply for the additional funds.
Okay. Thank you. That was pretty clear to me. Any questions?
Well, I do.
Mhm.
I believe access is one of the more expensive ways to get transportation.
Oh, well, access meaning our program.
Oh, not
Okay.
not OCTA access.
Yeah, so currently we get free bus passes by OCTA.
Really?
Oh, okay. Well,
So yeah, it's not very
hard to beat that
expensive
then.
for us. We like that.
I take it back.
Yes.
So do we have a motion?
No, we don't have a motion.
What, yeah, okay, I'll make the motion.
And I'll second it.
Okay, more questions. Parliamentary procedures are we make
I
a
know,
motion second,
yeah.
then we talk about it.
All right, let's do it.
Okay, so anyway, this is new. We haven't had it before.
Right.
In my 28 years, haven't seen this. So this is a new education code starting this year.
Mhm.
And so you did pretty good for just a short period of time.
And you will see it every year after by April 1st. I don't know why they couldn't make it with the rest of the dates, but
Okay.
it's April 1st.
And this passes the muster for the state template, or what
They
they
didn't
want?
give a template, so
you just-
we borrowed examples from some of our fellow colleagues.
Okay.
And so some of our districts have a lot of buses, and so they obviously is very large, and so it does require us to meet with our stakeholders and things like that also.
Okay.
I saw Whittier schools are in here. That's just because
They refer students to our special schools program.
they're coming from Whittier into Orange County.
Yes. Let's see, we've got them from Whittier. We have ABC Unified.
And these are generally students that are going to be in wheelchairs and otherwise, or
Maybe they may not be in wheelchairs, but they may need aid with them due to behavioral issues.
but okay. All right.
Yes, they are they're in a more localized, they're not in a large school bus. They're in the smaller school bus with probably an aid. We usually have multiple aides on a bus sometimes, depending on the student. But they could be non-ambulatory.
So instead of being $1.6 million in the red, we're going to be in the black?
Well, I'm not sure because the state was very unclear how much funding they're going to get. They're just going to give us more funding. We haven't received a cost of living increase on this funding since 13-14, so at least we will now be eligible for the cost of living increase, which for the next year will be 8%, so as it is right now. So that at least is helpful, but we do believe that we will get a little more funding.
Okay. No more questions.
Any more questions or discussion? All right, we'll take it to a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passes 5-0. Okay, and that brings us to our information items. Any communication, information, or discussion? Do we have an OSHA update?
You do not have an OSHA update at this time.
I guess it's a little soon anyway.
Is Al okay?
I'm sorry?
Is Al okay?
Yes, as far as I know.
Okay, so, okay. He's just missed
Several meetings,
several
yes.
meetings,
And part of it is travel, some of it is conflicting meetings. I spoke with him 2 days ago, and he wasn't sure if he was going to be here, but figured if we started the meeting without him, he wasn't going to,
Sure.
be here. But yes,
Okay, so he's fine.
we've
He's
been
healthy.
working with him regularly. It's just
Okay.
he's got a lot on his plate, and typically you all have lots of questions for staff. So
Very good.
Do we have any announcements from our missing superintendent or our deputy superintendent?
Just a reminder that your next board meeting was changed, and so it's Wednesday, April 12th at 5 o'clock, and the submission deadline is March 29th. You'll get your board packets on the 7th of April. Wanted to remind the board again about the Memorial Day essay contest and make sure that that is still something that you all want to continue, because this is the time we start working with our teachers and our students. And for the benefit of Trustee Valdez, the board has a Memorial Day essay contest for our students in our program. And so we have both our alternative ed as well as our special ed students who develop an essay, or for our special needs students, last year was the first year they did pictures, because we did a picture category for some of those who can't, utilize language in the same way. And we judge those. They're read before, and each board member has provided a financial contribution. It was extended to staff leadership to also contribute, and we give out a monetary cash, and we give them a nice certificate at the May board meeting. So this would be the next 6 weeks. The teachers will be working with students to get contributions towards either the essays or pictures. And then I just need to know which board members this year would want to help judge. I don't know, 2, 3 of you, along with some of our administrative staff. So I'll send out, or ask Daru to send out something to you all to check your schedules for, would be probably just before your next board meeting. We would be going through them, because then we'd want to make arrangements for the students to be able to be here. In the past, we've asked for the winner to read their essay or to be here to be present to receive. And so we'll do the first, second, and third place in most cases to recognize them. Board takes pictures with them, and typically their teacher or their families here with them as well.
It's a very moving experience. The Jack Hammett Memorial Essay. Jack Hammett was a former mayor of Coast Mesa, is responsible for the veteran group here in Orange County, and it's quite moving. We have the Sunburst Academy. They come in, they present the flag, and it's quite officious. What Nina didn't tell you is that the newest board member picks up the tab for us. No, I'm just kidding. So typically I've donated $200, and so I'll make that. And that goes to a fund that's not mixed with any of our
Correct.
other funds in the department.
100% of the what is contributed is dispersed to the awardees. And the last 2 years, we've had enough funding that we gave first, second, and third place, and then we bought gift cards for all of the students who put forth an essay or a picture. And so we gave that to them along with a certificate, just so that they were all recognized for contributing. The other thing that I didn't mention, because you reminded me, Jack Hammett, it's named after him, but we do invite the veterans at that meeting also. And so typically they're also here, and we give them a few minutes on the agenda also to dialogue about what's happening and what they've been doing, so forth. So
Quite patriotic. And we're going to have the Memorial Day resolution on?
yes,
Okay,
yes,
like we normally
that
do?
would all be part of that.
Is this in May or June?
May.
May.
Yeah.
Oh.
Okay. Then the other question for you all is, June will be budget approval time again for next fiscal year. So Renee is making herself available to do a budget study session. And so wanted to know if you want to schedule that at the April board meeting. Typically, the budget study session is an hour or two before the board meeting, so that, she can go over nuances in the budget, answer questions, see if there's anything in terms of what you've been seeing and getting that you'd like to see differently, so that as she and her staff are preparing the budget to be presented to the board, they can make sure that they are also looking at the areas that the board's identified. So,
Yeah, I think maybe if Renee could just be available an hour before that meeting, and then whoever wants to and is able to come for a study session.
we'll send out something just to make sure that.
Yeah, to make sure that someone's going to show
because
up.
it's what- yeah,
Yeah,
because you would have the budget study session and then move into your.
Absolutely.
And so anytime there's more than 3 board members, it's a meeting. So we want to make sure that we would calendar that. So
Okay,
forth.
perfect.
Okay,
So
for
just send
Brown Act
something out to us.
purposes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. Okay.
All right.
All right. In terms of legislative updates, I'll call Mr. Rowland up to talk about really the, I think, amazing work that we've been doing along these lines.
Yes, members of the board, this is not only a legislative update, but also a progress report on the work that David Turch and Associates have been doing in Washington, D.C. President Biden plans to submit his budget request to Congress on March 9. The submission of this document is the unofficial start of the budget season on Capitol Hill. The first Monday in February, according to the Congressional Budget Act of 1974, is the date when the president must submit his budget to Congress, but there's no penalty for missing this deadline and is often missed. The Republicans in the House plan to pass 12 appropriation bills separately this year before October 1st, the start of the new fiscal year. The last time all 12 bills were signed into law before October 1 was 1997. Earmarks. Congressionally directed spending is what the Senate refers to earmarks as now. Community project funding is what the House calls them now. Senators Feinstein and Padilla have issued calls for projects. Senator Padilla requires forms submitted by March 3rd. Senator Feinstein's office wants them by March 13th. The offices must submit requests to the Senate Appropriations Committee by the end of March. The House has not set deadlines yet. We expect them shortly. The House Appropriations Committee is discussing revisions for community project funding. It is rumored to be discussions that make projects to have more of a federal nexus and eliminate projects that serve as commemoration to members of Congress like a park or a museum. David Turch and Associates have been sending the board information on the process since the end of January. We've had discussions with the board on potential projects and processes. David Turch and Associates has reached out to congressional offices of Correa, Porter, Kim Steele, Levin, and Sanchez to ask if they will be submitting projects for funding, if they have deadlines, and have asked to include us in any emails regarding the process and the dates. On February 15th, David Turch and Associates set out a funding notice for the New Schools Venture Fund, which is a private organization that funds innovative schools. On February 1, we notified the board, that we being David Turch and Associates, of this notice, that this notice was coming soon. On January 31, DTA sent the board a form David Turch and Associates created that summarizes the questions that Congress has asked in the past regarding congressionally directed spending. We anticipate that Congress would begin to ask for these projects shortly. So simply put, there's a process that every congressperson asks, but it's somewhat formalized. It's somewhat the same, but every congressperson has a different form to request, to accept funding requests. And that's what they provided us. And we're working with that.
Do we have any projects or funding that we're actually going to be involved in or
We are
knowledgeable?
submitting some funding requests by the March 3rd deadline. They're still taking shape. That's how these things work. You have a mission statement, a budget, a specific ask, and you try to make it amenable to the specific senator or congressperson.
So we're basically working around the clock the next 72 hours.
The clock has started.
It's, yeah.
Who'll be working with?
Me.
Me.
Yeah.
No, which congressperson?
We're not sure yet.
Okay.
We're not sure yet.
So Turk is working with you and he'll direct you to the right congress.
We're trying to get the right geographic location, the right ideology, and we have some good ideas.
Okay.
Pretty exciting stuff. More to be reported on next month. Okay, committee reports. Do we have any committee reports from anyone? I know a few of us are going to CCSA next. Is that next week? 2 weeks? Pretty soon.
Week after.
Pretty soon. And that leaves us to board member comments. I'll start with Trustee Shaw. You look like you wanted to jump in there.
I do. I just wanted to mention I have to be in Sacramento the first week in May for work. I'm going to be up there all week, which includes May 3rd, the day we have our meeting. So I I'm heartbroken to think I wouldn't be here for the essay event, but I don't know, maybe we can talk afterwards if it's possible to have me beam in remotely, or can I be on the screen and do it that way? So that's all. I want to participate if I can, but I will be in Sacramento that week.
And it's maybe too late to move that meeting at this point.
I'm flexible.
I'm in Washington, D.C. all the next week too.
Oh.
So
All right. Oh, forget about
my
you then.
stupid employer, gets in the way sometimes.
Okay. Trustee Valdez, comments?
Yeah, I wanted to respond to at least some of the public comments tonight. One was about the legal bills that we approve every month. I personally review every one of the legal bills. I can tell the public, based on my expertise in the law, that Greg Rowland, who is our board attorney, is a fantastic attorney in the educational community. He absolutely knows what he's doing. For the $360,000 being discussed in the public comments, I would like to point out that this department's annual budget is $406 million. So in essence, this board has approved 0.0088% of the department's budget for legal expenses with Mr. Rowland's office, which I don't think is a significant amount to protect the parents and students of Orange County. There was another public comment about support of public schools. And I mean, I just don't even know where this is coming from. This is I'll speak for myself. I am, a pro-charter. I take an actively pro-charter position, but I'm very pro-public school. I have personally visited with the superintendents of the Tustin Unified School District, Santa Ana, and Garden Grove, and I plan to meet with the superintendent of Anaheim. The thought that, myself or, I don't want to speak for my colleagues, but just for myself, that this is not a pro-public school board is just simply false. And I reject that entirely. So, thank you.
I'll echo those comments, by the way.
Well, I'll especially echo them since charter schools are public schools, public free schools. So I think we're all very pro-public free school. I think from my standpoint, I just don't want to see children trapped by their zip code. I want to make sure
It's exactly right.
Equal opportunity for all the kids in our county, especially those that are most vulnerable, who are usually most affected and who are attending the charter schools.
Trustee Barkey, if I may,
Yeah.
Madam President, my district in particular has a lot of disadvantaged kids, and I do not want them trapped in a school that doesn't service them. I'm going to offer the parents an educational option. I believe that is the best way to service our kids, and anyone who just thinks opposite just has another agenda. But I'm here for the kids of Orange County.
Yeah,
And we all are, yes.
Yeah, I think this is just campaign politics that's being brought into this boardroom here. Also want to address some of the issues that were brought up regarding legal bills as far as how they are reviewed for under public comments. An individual talked about that. We never see them. Well, if we look at our board policy 100-21, that is the process that we have been following. The executive committee approves legal counsel invoices, and then in closed session, because they are privileged information, they are reviewed by us, and they can be reviewed any time by any of the board members with Mr. Rowland. So again, that's a board policy issue, and it stems from way back in March 23rd. We have a statement on our board website about the General Litigation Council, and it's I'm looking at it right here. It is a very long and lengthy document, how we got to this point. It's 7 pages, and I can go into all the detail. It's probably it's derogatory and disparaging against some people. I'm not going to even say it here in public, but if you're wanting to look at where the origins of all of this came from, it's there in the March 3rd, 2021 statement under the County Board of Education. I do it more
Yeah, go.
If I'm done, okay. So just bringing that to the public record. I also want to bring to the public record, because we held 2 years ago a public forum on opening schools safely during the August of 2020, during the initial part of the COVID pandemic, and it was very scary times for this country. We didn't know what we were facing. We thought that it was from Wuhan, and now we have confirmation that this virus came from the Chinese Communist Party Wuhan lab. We dealt with it because we saw potentially some of the negative effects. We saw kids that were being masked. We saw and had hundreds of parents that came to our board meeting complaining about this public policy. We came out in our white paper that was published that summer. Will Swain helped me write it. I think we had the good trustee Sparks with her oversight and making sure we use the right language and pronouns and adverbs and proper placement of commas and periods. But we came out with a very good and scientific-based conclusions at the time that brought a lot of controversy to this board. And one of them was on the efficacy of face masks. Tonight we had Libby, who came and talked about face masks. I'm glad she didn't get COVID. God bless her for that. I didn't get COVID, although I was treating COVID patients. I did get my vaccine. But we now have something that I want to bring to this board, because I think you'll be happy to know that we are validated in our conclusions by the Cochrane Library. There was some confusion regarding a URL link. Apparently, it might not have been right. I don't know how that happened, but the Cochrane Library, you can look it up on the physical interventions to interrupt or reduce the spread of respiratory viruses. It is like close to 70 pages. It's very long. So I'm just going to give you some of the highlights here. Again, this is a study that looks at randomized controlled trials. It's multi-center analysis. And they come here, their conclusions are on page 3, the pooled results of these randomized controlled studies did not show a clear reduction in respiratory viral infection with the use of medical surgical masks. And that was one of our conclusions that got the biggest public criticism. So I just want to tell our board that we followed the science. There was a reference that I used in that dating to the earlier decade in which we had the same conclusions by a multi-center analysis. So that's all I have to say and share to this board.
Okay, thank you. I'll just add, I want to just add a couple things related to some of the public comment around the resolution that we created in a special meeting that we had regarding OSHA, the Orange County School of the Arts, and the the troubles that have been going on there that are really hard to hear about, and our hearts go out to and continue to go out to all of the people that have been harmed by those in power and those that they who they trusted in their care at OSHA. We're doing everything in our ability as a board with the advice that we're getting from our council as well. We called a special board meeting, as you know, in March, and we approved a resolution that is posted to our website to support the superintendent and staff to investigate. And I refer the public to that resolution and to read through it carefully. And we end the resolution by saying, and we are, with all the irons that we have in the fire, but we are continuing to cooperate and organize and present a public school safety forum to inform students, parents, faculty, school employees, and members of the public as to best practices in recognizing, reporting, and preventing any sexual violence on campuses. And it's something that is very important to us. We're not taking any of it lightly. We're taking all of the comments very seriously and doing everything we possibly can to uncover what may have, what is alleged to have occurred. So,
a couple thoughts. I've heard a couple comments from the public that came up that this has been an ongoing issue for decades, and it's like, well, we weren't there in the early 90s when all this is happening, when the litigation occurred. We only took oversight just a few years ago. So we had nothing to do with that, and it's very important for the public to know that if they are aware of any criminal activity, to call the police. Don't come to us, call the police, because that's a criminal act subject to penal code violations and incarceration and all that. So we
Absolutely.
need to make that a big point.
Yeah, and thank you for that reminder to the public, because we're going to highlight everything that we possibly can and do everything that we possibly can as a board. So I wanted to say those comments. Any other final comments before we wrap up the meeting?
We do, Doctor, have one more public comment.
Okay.
We want to hear from Patty.
I apologize for being late, but thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. On February 28th, the Orange County Board of Supervisors approved Agenda Number 24, Approval of Amendment 2 to the Memorandum of Understanding with Orange County Superintendent of Schools, aka Orange County Department of Education, will continue to strengthen the partnerships between Orange County Healthcare Agency and educational entities with the goal of increasing access to behavioral health services and support for students and families. Starting March 1st, 2023 through December 31st, 2026. In the agenda, it states that 3 specialized coordinators will include a wealth-based coordinator who will collaborate with existing OCDE and Children's Health of Orange County staff to plan, establish, and support the development of additional student wellness centers called Well Spaces in schools across Orange County. It describes wellness spaces as tranquil spaces allowing students to decompress, learn mindfulness strategies, and develop self-regulation and coping skills. With this contract being approved, how much transparency will Superintendent Alma Harris have with the whole Board of Education and with the parents? It was unfortunate that the public wasn't aware of Superintendent Alma Harris's previous acceptance of Wellness Spaces, a catalyst for equitable access for students, grant for the sum of $507,000. How can the public obtain more information on who will be spending the money? Will it continue to be nonprofits that have a political party preference, or a nonprofit that is focused on gender identity? What kind of questions will be asked if the kids go to wellness spaces? Will children be given surveys if they go to one without a parent's consent? Will children be asked questions about their gender identity or pronouns? Do you have concerns that these wellness spaces might open the door to CPS? Obviously, if a child is in danger, it's important to get them involved. But where will an adult in a wellness space draw the line? Will parents be reported for child abuse if they do not call their children they, thems, or demons, furries, or any other made-up name from the child that they choose to create? Or will a parent be reported for child abuse if they refuse to acknowledge that their daughter is a boy or their son is a girl? Who gets to determine what is allowed in a wellness space? What are the legal guidelines for a wellness space? What kind of education or experience do you need to be a wellness-based coordinator? As a mother, I'm just asking the board to please be transparent with the public. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you. So at this point, we will adjourn the meeting. You all have a great evening and nice month. And remember, our next meeting is going to be Wednesday, April 12th at 5 o'clock. We'll see you then.